Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement in lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Erin, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. I am really excited and interested to dive into your story after doing some preliminary research on all the podcasts I've seen you on. So thanks for taking the time today.
Absolutely. I've been really excited.
So I'm going to just save you some time and read a quick synopsis of your bio so we can not skip past that, but dive into different topics that are around that. What I've seen, and you've bravely shared a really traumatic story from, I think, from college and high school, where you were sexually abused by your gymnastic coach. And the experience through the legal system was as traumatic, not as traumatic, but it was traumatic in itself. Even though it got to the point where you wanted to, you realized there had to be a better way. And what was really interesting when I looked to your story, there's a lot of similarities to my story and to others. My dad is an attorney who's been a big motivation and inspiration in my life. And I saw that in your story, where your dad actually helped and encouraged you to go to law school, to do something to help change the legal system. And once you graduated law school, you actually got a family law job that was about 90 minutes from your home. And I think after doing that for a little bit, you realized you could start your own practice. And in 2009, you started the Levine Family Law Group, and you said with your dad's help, which is great to see. And over that time, you had 2 children. And one of the things that became clear to you, aggressive litigation was not ideal for parenting and just not really ideal for the law practice, and especially when it came to divorce. In 2017, within the practice, you started Hello Divorce as a way to modernize and with tech and empathy into the divorce system. In 2019, you ended up spinning it off to a separate company so you can bring it nationwide. And I think it actually circles back really well to your most recent LinkedIn post, where maybe you got the 50th state, but you just posted on LinkedIn, you're now available in all 50 states for Hello Divorce.
That's correct.
Does that sum up?
What else
everything?
is there to talk about? You hit it all, but yes, that is all correct.
And that's what we'll see. We'll see, because one of the things I look at is I want to learn something new on this podcast, not what I've seen you say so many times. So with that, I'll start with this question. Since you have such a deep story, you've told your story so many times. Is there anything, and this, let me just take a step back. This is Lawyers Who Learn. So it's about how you've learned and grew throughout your career, which I run an online CLE company. Maybe 98% of your learning is outside of CLE and 2% is inside CLE. And that's what this podcast is about. So is there any topic that you wish people would ask you about that they never have, or you don't get to talk about enough when you think about how you've grown and learned throughout your career, instead of just going through your bio like you did? And if you don't have anything comes to mind, that's okay too. I just want to start with that to see if that sparks anything in your head.
I think one of the things that we don't talk a lot about on podcasts, because generally speaking, that first half hour is just walking through everything that you were able to summarize so clearly and beautifully in a couple minutes, is what does all of this mean to me? How have I been able to reinvent my career and my life so often? And how does that change how I walk through the world? That's definitely not something that I get asked, but I think it's important because so many of us are in that stage of our career where it's been fine, but fine isn't enough. We want more.
I love that question, because I could talk about that topic 24/7. There's a Greek term called arete. Have you heard of that before?
No.
It means living to your fullest, living to excellence, to your fullest potential. And the whole point of arete is and this is Stoic philosophy. We've lived to our potential, or when we live to our fullest potential, when we meet that area, is when we're essentially living our life's purpose. And I think what you're saying there, what does this all mean? How do you go through every day? So is that, by the way, was that what you were talking about? How I reflected it?
Yeah, but you just stole my thunder. Just kidding. That's what I was going to say. And that's also how I define
what were you going to say?
success.
Just to repeat, what were you going to say?
No, that is how we find joy. That is how we best find meaning and success in our lives. Because let's face it, when it comes to the professional, we spend as much or more, whether that's for better or worse, in the professional. And if I am not learning, if I am not curious, if I am not exploring during the professional, then I am not happy because I need growth. Growth is what fuels me. And not just seeing growth in my own self, but growth in the people around me. And that's really who I seek out to work with as well. Those that are willing to be brave enough to unlearn outdated approaches and try something new that won't just benefit their lives, but benefit their community and perhaps even the profession as a whole.
And again, let's just we're going to take a pause in a second, but not yet, just to make sure we're all clear about what hello divorce is, because I think it's a fascinating concept, and it speaks to a really higher mission, which not everyone gets an easy focus where my company actually makes a difference. When you said, what does it mean? When I hear that, I relate back to myself, where when people from the outside were like, oh my God, Dave, you're so accomplished, you've done this and that. And I'm like, I'm not that I'm miserable, but like, I think I should be, I wish, or I want, or there's so much more that I think I can be doing that I haven't yet. And I'm wondering, do we all have that story to some degree? And if you can relate to that, is there anything specific that comes to mind when you think about what does it mean to when you're talking about your story?
I think, so first of all, I absolutely relate to that. And I wish I didn't. I wish I could be satisfied with where I am at all times. And the one thing that I try to do when I get in that pattern, because it comes up a lot, I have a really hard time celebrating my wins. In fact, I hate to lose more than I love to win. And unfortunately, that means I'll spend a lot of time focused on things that aren't going right, which is really frustrating. So this doesn't specifically answer your question, and I promise to be a lot more responsive going forward. But I would say that one thing I have to remind myself a lot of is why I began practicing law to begin with. And it felt like for a very long time in my career that my career was not at all mirroring the reason why I went into law. I was making money, I was winning trials, I was making clients reasonably happy, but I didn't get the opportunity to really connect with all of the reasons why I went into law. And now I get to. And I have to remind myself of that. I'm making progress on the beginning, and that matters a lot. And not everybody gets to have that experience.
And what I hear, there's a gratitude of the purpose. Can you just to be very clear, what was the reason that how do you communicate it? The reasons why you got into law?
The biggest reason why I got into the law personally is because of my own experience with the legal system. As a late teen, I sued my gymnastics coach, and I found the entire process scary, disempowering, overwhelming, overly contentious. I felt lost the entire time, and I had no idea what was coming next. And that not only impacted the outcome of the case, but it also impacted my emotional well-being while I was walking through it.
And I can imagine. And the question I have for you is, how did you bridge the gap from feeling like the system needs to change to actually thinking you can have it's one thing to go to law school. It's one thing to get a legal job. It's another thing to actually think you can have a shift and an impact. And and I don't know where your father comes into play, but that to me is really, I'm really interested in, because it's something that's talked about lawyers who learn. That is a really big step that most people really need help in getting to.
Yeah. So I think initially I went into family law because it was the first job that got offered to me. But it ended up playing a really big role in my life and allowing me to start to help people with this. In that with family law, there's a beginning, middle, and end. And you get to walk people through what, for many of them, is the most stressful experience of their life. So I got to be with them as a lawyer when they came in and they were heartbroken and frustrated and scared. And I got to walk them through the entire process and have them set up with a foundation most of the time that allowed them to empower a better next chapter. It became clear to me, though, that we were missing a lot. We were missing, number one, the fact that the vast majority of people can't afford lawyers. And it's not that I didn't want them to have legal counsel. I just wanted us to have the ability to use technology such that more people could access legal advice when they needed it. The second really big issue for me is that as lawyers, we spend so much time talking about the law, and that's important. Who else is going to do it if it's not for us? But in family law and many other areas of law, it's a massive life transition. Everything is changing for people, from their morning rituals to how and when they parent, to where they live, to what their insurance policy is. And I saw this opportunity to really help people through the legal process by also giving them resources that would help them with the life transition itself. And that was a really hard shift, because as lawyers, we are discouraged from doing that, right? You might have heard of the term emotional lawyering, and everyone says, stay away from it. It's not our job. But we found that's exactly what people wanted, and decided to give it a shot and give it to them.
I've interviewed, as an example, on a different level, like Benjamin Brofman, who is a criminal defense attorney, represents the top athletes and celebrities who go into court. And what he says is he deals with people at their lowest moments. And he said he's more a therapist half the times than an actual attorney, because they're going through such emotional components. And so that's what I'm hearing you say as well. And I think it's interesting that you say you went into family law just because that's what you ended up getting. Because again, going back to the reason you went into law was to have an impact or make a difference. And so is what I'm hearing is you went into law not knowing exactly how you were going to have a different, like you didn't go into law saying, I'm going to family law, then I'm going to divorce law. You just went in and say, I'm just going to figure it out when I get there.
Okay. Yes and no. So going way back when I was young, my dad was a trial attorney. He would often bring home his cases to the dinner table. And I found that I had an interest and perhaps a talent in debating and helping my dad structure those cases. Then comes gymnastics. That became my entire focus. As a child, you think that's going to be your life's career. You don't realize that by 21, by 19, you're old. And so that's when I stopped thinking about the law. And I really didn't think I was going to go in that direction at all. Then came the experience as a late teen with the legal process. I was reminded again how important it was. And I realized at that point that, yes, I do want to help people through this life experience through the legal process, but I don't know how yet. And so the first thing I identified I needed to do, the most important thing, was to not be so shy. I was the girl in law school that when they called on me for the Socratic method, I'd hide under my desk. I'd literally start to shrink myself because I was so terrified. So I knew before I figured out the path in law that I was going to go, I needed to learn how to speak up, how to interview witnesses, how to potentially be in court and use my voice and start to move past that imposter syndrome. And family law seemed like a great place for me to be because the jobs immediately put me in the courtroom. And that's what I thought I needed. It just happens to turn out that family law was a perfect place for me to be because it allowed me to fulfill my mission or to start to fulfill it.
Thank you. Now I get it. No, now I get it. And I'm sure you've said this before, and I only had so much time to look through, but you said it so elegantly just now. I get it. Did you, by the way, any chance, do you happen to read the depositions with your dad and do the opposing side while he did one side or
Oh,
no?
yeah.
I used
Yes,
to do
we
that
did
too.
all of that. Oh, I love it. Yes, we did all of that. This was back in a day when my dad could actually bring me into the courtroom
Yeah.
and he would parade me in front of the jury. It was like, now looking back at it, I'm like, I know exactly what you were doing. But at the time, it was such an incredible experience. He also would take me into judicial settlement conferences and say that he didn't have childcare when in fact he did, so that I could have that like full experience. It was amazing.
Man.
Lost my way for a while. Like I didn't even know if I would go to college. And it took me about 6 years to get through it. But then it became so clear after I finished the criminal and the civil trial for my own personal stuff that, oh gosh, this is where I belong. Now, what? I don't know, but I belong here in the law.
Got it. So what was the moment where you're like at this family law firm and you said, okay, I think I can do this. I can start my own shop.
I think it was something, there wasn't exactly a moment. Looking back, it definitely feels like it.
Sure.
And the reason why I say that is because I was starting to pay a lot more attention to justice and legal technology. I was starting to volunteer a lot more in the courtrooms as a judge pro tem and as a settlement judge to understand more about what it's like to walk through a lawsuit without a lawyer. But it wasn't until just after the birth of my second child, I tried a case and won. And my client, who got child custody, she got to be primary parent, came back to me and said, if I were to do it again, I never would have litigated. And this was after she won. She said, and she even wrote a book later on about it. Wonderful woman who's inspiring so many others through the divorce process now. But she said, like, it ruins really any opportunity to co-parent with trust and impact for, at that time, her foreseeable future. And the conflict and tension between her and her ex, there was only so much you can hide from your children. And it was such a massive negative impact on their lives. And it hit me at that point. I'm not the type of person that's probably going to be able to change an entire system, nor is that where my skills are best suited. But if I could help people opt out of the system altogether and divorce with more control and on their own terms, then maybe, just maybe, I can start to change the experience itself and how it impacts their kids, their communities, their workplaces, that kind of thing.
I swear to God, I just got chills. So it makes sense because I know so many couples who gotten divorced and that story is repeated. First of all, it takes years. Second of all, it costs more money than they can, and then all the money is going to the attorneys, and they end off in generally not the best co-parent. And look, you're getting divorced, so sometimes that's what's going to happen depending on where it is. Yeah. Okay, so but when you started your own law firm, was that more of just a control what cases you take and what you do, or there's a risk to doing that? I was just curious.
Right.
The entrepreneurial set for many attorneys who may be listening to this want to start their own firm, either outside of starting from law school or somewhere else. And how did you go about, what did you need to learn to do that?
So starting the law firm itself, which is what I did back in 2009, actually wasn't that challenging for me for a couple reasons. Number one is I had the support of my dad. Of course, the first day I opened it, he fully retired. So really, he gave me all this. We're going to do this together. You've got this. But really, he was just hanging on so that I would do it because he knew how much I loved being an entrepreneur. And that's accurate. And I was lucky because things like Yelp, things like SEO, things like online marketing were newer to lawyers. And I was okay at it. And it set me apart. And I didn't have a whole lot of trouble back then bringing in clients. So I don't think I really knew how hard it is to build a business. Launching a business is easy, but how hard it was to build a business until I built this second company, Hello Divorce. And Hello Divorce is an easier, kinder, less expensive divorce that leads to better outcomes through a platform that combines online tech, resources, AI, with expert support from lawyers, financial advisors, mediators, and life coaches. And I started it as a side hustle. So I was still practicing full-time and I was the managing attorney at my firm. And I wanted to do a couple things with Hello Divorce. First, I wanted to see if we could create a product that people could be successful with, that they could use and not just get through their divorce, but save money, save time, and feel as positive about the outcome as they possibly could. That was number one. I had to do that, a minimal viable product that would work. The second piece was that I had to figure out whether or not I could do it and be regulatory compliant. Would the powers that be, would they support what I was doing? And even though all I was getting from a lot of my peers was, you are crazy, this will never work, and it can't possibly be legal. So that's how I started. I bootstrapped, side hustled, and it was 2 years in before I was completely able to stop practicing law and focus full-time on Hello Divorce. I still maintain a law firm, but that it mainly exists to route the people that use Hello Divorce through a law firm when and if they need legal advice. A little confusing.
No, it's not confusing. There's so many different ways I can ask questions from this. So just to be clear, Hello Divorce, the concept is to be able to go through a divorce in the best case scenario without needing an attorney. Am I correct?
Yes, but I would say more about finding the right support that you need for your divorce, whether that be a lawyer, whether that be software only, whether that be using a mediator.
Fair enough. Just again, for what you said, could this be regulatory compliant? What were some of the hurdles that you were concerned about? Because my first question is, maybe I shouldn't be asking this. It's such a simple question. Do you need attorneys to get a divorce in some states or any state or anywhere?
You don't ever need one. You don't. Legally, you don't need a lawyer. However, everything that everyone tells you on the media, in resources from the court clerk, from facilitators' offices, they will tell you that you do. So that is firmly ingrained in people's minds. And that was one of the reasons why I felt that it was so important that people have access to lawyers, even in the most basic divorce, even if they don't end up using one. I wanted them to know that a lawyer would be available to them through the platform. But as far as what were some of the initial challenges, before I spun Hello Divorce out into its own company, it was a lot easier because where the software failed, my paralegal or a lawyer, one of us could jump in and help people. But that is legal advice, not legal information. And we couldn't do that through Hello Divorce. The technology had to be able to live and stand on its own. I also knew that in order to get to a point where I could grow this both deeper into the divorce vertical so that we helped with things like home equity division, but also geographically, I was going to need some money. And I wasn't willing to take all the risk on my own. Like, I already had debt in my law firm. I wasn't about to take on a ton more debt on my own and put myself or my family in that position. So I knew I wanted to raise capital. And guess what? For the most part, lawyers can't do that unless you're raising it from other lawyers. So then I had to figure out, how do I spin this out into a company that will allow me to do that, but still be able to offer people legal advice if they needed it. And there's a few different ways that you could do it. For us, it was the 2-entity model. I wanted to be able to continue to have control over which lawyers our customers worked with so that I could vet them, and quality control and all of those good things.
How much money did you raise?
We've raised 7.5 million.
And how many rounds is that?
That is 3. So we had seed and plus or bridge or whatever people are calling it these days.
So congrats on raising money. That
Thank
can be
you.
a whole podcast in itself, but we
Yeah.
only have so much time. The question I have for you, when you raised that money, what did you say was your TAM, your total addressable market that you saw for Hello Divorce to raise that?
Yeah. So I look at it a couple ways. So we have the legal process itself, and we know that approximately 2 million people go through divorce every day. Sorry, every day. God, that would be terrible.
Damn.
Right? Approximately 2 million people in the US go through a divorce every year.
Which is still a significant number.
It's a significant number. But then the way I look at divorce is it's really a 7-year journey. So on average, for 3 to 4 years before the divorce begins, you have people trying to save their marriage, thinking through what life might look like, planning for a divorce, looking for resources that could potentially help them with reconciliation or skills to keep the marriage together, working through the shame, the overwhelm, the fear, and everything else that comes up from leaving a marriage that you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life in. And people need support during that period. And it's one thing that lawyers don't often get to do. They might want to, but they don't. So we have that period. And then we have the legal process itself. And then post-divorce, we have to help people divide their retirement accounts in a way that doesn't mean early withdrawal penalties. We have health insurance. We need to help refi or purchase a new home. So that ends up being about a 7-year journey, and 1 in 5 Americans are in that journey. And I wanted to make sure we could help as many of them as possible.
And again, I don't know if you can share it or not, but did you have a number of how big the market is you're trying to get it? Like how big do you think your market is?
It's in the billions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And again, go ahead.
Let me just follow up a little bit on that. That being said, it doesn't mean that it will make sense for Hello Divorce to continue raising rounds, right? Because obviously the more you raise, the higher the valuation needs to be and the higher the potential win for the VCs. We may, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, for what it's worth.
No, totally. And for what it's worth, I've never raised money for Lawline. So I've never gone that sort of having to answer to anybody route or to do that. And maybe I should or shouldn't. So I'm learning just from hearing you say that. It's interesting.
I'm always happy to talk to you about it too. So
awesome.
Offline is
and the same way I am, other people are, right? That's why it's always good to just ask the question. And it's really interesting because again, not to go deep in here, but like the first 3 to 4 years, that's an interesting market because how do you connect to the people who are still married to do that? And we don't need to go into that point, but I just think that's an interesting thought process on when you're not happy. Is there a business model to also support attorneys to make their lives easier in supporting their clients?
Yeah. So that was another one of my initial goals before I raised capital. Because remember, I'm starting back in 2018 as a side hustle, 2019, trying to figure all this out, doing the research, trying to determine whether or not to raise capital, but didn't actually raise my first round in 2021 and didn't try until then either. And so one of the things that was really important to me is I had to create a model that lawyers could earn a living. Because if lawyers can't earn a living with this model, then how truly are we going to solve the access to justice crisis? How truly are we going to expand this model into other areas of law? It had to be a model that not only made legal services easier to access, faster and cheaper, but that still gave lawyers the opportunity to make a healthy living. And I don't think we've solved it perfectly, but we've solved it enough that have very little turnover. And it does mean more volume for lawyers because they're doing a lot more limited scope work. They're giving a lot more advice. They're doing a lot more skills on helping people with negotiation and think through mediation strategy. But it's also, for a lot of people, great work because it's on their own time. It's could be late at night if that's what works best for them. It's not going to court. It can be done remote. So it's a little bit about money, a lot about lifestyle, and just trying to find always like that perfect storm of what works for the consumer and the lawyer.
And I saw on your site, it's like 2,000 plan subscription, 4,000 plan subscription. Is it essentially, if let's say I'm an attorney, I'm trying to grow my divorce law practice, could I sign up for some type of subscription? So it helps me easier do what I need to do to support my clients?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me be a little bit more specific. So for most states, not all, but most states, there's 3 separate plans, right? There's a software only plan that's $400. There is a assisted plan that's $2,000, and then there's an expert plan that's $4,000 that includes 5 hours with a lawyer, mediator, financial advisor, or life coach. The way that lawyers currently participate in the program is one of 2 ways. One is by being one of our own lawyers. So being available for anyone, any consumer who's working through the Hello Divorce platform who needs or wants legal advice, they can purchase through the portal and work with one of the lawyers. So that's just one easy way. I'm a lawyer. I want to do some of this work. I'd love to supplement my practice with 5 hours a week or a month that I know I'll get paid.
With a specific work. Got it.
Exactly. That's like number one option. The second option is that we don't represent. We don't do any full representation. We don't do any meeting our clients in an office. There are things that we just don't do. And we have lawyers and mediators that are on the platform simply to be referred to. So somebody who is looking for a lawyer or mediator in their county or state would see the bio, see the welcome video, and decide which one might be right for them. I know what you're getting at, we haven't directly explored yet with selling the software to lawyers to be able to use with their own clients. Maybe at some point, but that's not something we're doing now.
The only reason I thought of that is it's so hard. Attorneys in general, right? Like they just need, because it's about education and it's really hard to do. You set it all up. You put all the systems and forms and everything that's needed there. And sometimes somebody just wants to work with an attorney. And maybe this is a way for an attorney to do it at a more affordable rate for their clients. All right. Maybe something to think about as you grow. I think in terms of one last question about the business, and then we'll circle back to you. And then I know you still have a lot of hours left of the day. I'll let you get back to your day job. I read something about 1,000 transactions. How many impact, right? How many divorces? I don't know if you shared numbers publicly, but have you had an impact on making happier, more empathetic, easier divorces through your platform?
These are good. I love these questions because they get to the real stuff that hopefully your listeners want to hear. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask them. So thank you.
Sure.
At our last count, my last count, I'm sure my team knows exactly where we're at, but this was about 2 months ago, we had processed 10,000 divorces start to finish. So these are people that we know got divorced because we have a copy of their divorce agreement. There are thousands others that may have used our platform just for one piece of the divorce, like their financial disclosures, or they may have met with a certified divorce financial analyst to think through what they could do for spousal or child support. But in terms of start to finish, we did hit the 10,000 mark earlier this year.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
really,
you.
really amazing. Let's get it to, that's 0.5% of the yearly divorces. So let's get it to 5%.
Let's do it, please.
And I do think not knowing a lot, it seems like you have to go through the attorneys, because that's what I'm an attorney. I don't practice, but I'm an attorney. In my mind, I've been brainwashed until this moment, really, to think you need an attorney to get a divorce. We did do courses on collaborative divorces that are more friendly, but they're still using attorneys.
Yeah.
So there is still a big component of that. So again, you know better than me on what that means for scaling. So let's go back to you in the last few minutes. What you've mentioned, starting a business is easy, growing and scaling it is much harder. I agree. I've been doing this for 17 years right now, and it's been quite a journey. How have you continued to learn? As an example, you said the question that I asked you, most people don't ask that. The reason I feel very comfortable asking that, I've been a part of Entrepreneurs Organization.
I saw that.
17 years. I'm now a part of YPO. And in these organizations, we are just open. We share, we collaborate, because you got to learn from others. And 9 out of 10 times, we all are happy to share it, because it's like hard. It's hard enough for us to do what we're doing. Good luck if you want to try to copy us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Are you part of any organizations that have helped you? And let's start there before I go to the second part.
Yeah, no, but by default, my husband's been a part of EO he was for many years. And so
cool.
I got to know that community, and a lot of the people that were in his initial group, or whatever it is that you call it, have remained in our lives, either as friends or consultants, that kind of thing. So that was great. But I'm not currently involved.
What about in the legal space? You have from the outside and from when I look, and you have a pretty big following in the legal space. Is there any groups that you've used, or like when I interviewed Hallie Altman, she's like a pro at creating networks upon networks that have helped her grow personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an area where you've put your energy into more.
I wish I've done more. This has been quite a challenge, in that having kids while growing a business. And then last year I had cancer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so that was quite a year. I'm currently showing no cancer, and prognosis is excellent. It was pretty scary for a while, and very hard to run a life and a business during that period of time. So the people that I've most relied on, in terms of the friends that I met early on in the profession that have been the best and most supportive and most like challenging and all the good stuff, were back in the day on Twitter, which I don't ever go on anymore. But man, there was something magical about those like 2014 to 2019, where we just like all found each other and could be so real, and took that relationship offline and met up at conferences and had phone calls and brainstorming sessions. And those are my people.
Many times when people raise money, one of the things that they're looking for, in addition to money, is experience and guidance from a group or investor that can help them scale. Is that an area that you were looking for? And if so, how have you been able to utilize that?
100%. I didn't spend a lot of time networking before raising money because of imposter syndrome, just like always thinking that there was someone out there that was more equipped to do whatever job or task I was doing. And I was really fearful about asking anyone for anything. And then things immediately had to change. I founded this company, and I realized pretty much everything I need to do to build and grow this company, I don't inherently know. And how helpful would it be to have the support of others? One of the big reasons why I raised capital was because I knew I could get access to not only that expertise, but let's face it, like the connections that you need to continue to raise money, to grow your business, to get the press or the advice or the network, to be able to find the right people to hire, all of that stuff. Most recently, we've partnered with a massive legal insurance company to provide Hello Divorce to 3 million employees. And
wow,
I skipped everything I would have needed to do to get to the person at that insurance company I needed to talk to. But I got instant authority and validation by having an investor who knew the guy and put us in touch and sang our praises. Yeah. And like, that's like priceless, right?
That
just
really
gives
is.
you, yeah.
And what you said before, not to like gloss over it, it's just a reminder, like when you said you just went through cancer, you never know what somebody's going through or what they've been through. And almost everybody's going through something in some form. And that's why just showing up for people and helping them, and especially in divorce, like Bo Atkins, I think you know Bo as well. Very similar. Evolve Law has been trying to transform this from his own, again, personal experiences. So it really is impactful for me, and I know for others to hear these stories. We'll end circling back to the first question, just now that we have all this context, and maybe like you've thought about it, because you said, I wish people would ask me more, what does it mean to do all that? Like, I think that's how you said it, right? Does that ring a bell?
I did. I think so. Yeah.
I guess I would just, when you think about that for yourself, is what, I don't know, where do you think you still want to learn or grow, or where are you dealing with imposter syndrome that when you think about the next 5 years, 10 years, like what does it look like for you? And I'll let you go on that question. Too big a question? I can ask a smaller question.
That's a big question.
All right, let me ask you a smaller question. We don't need to do that. Last question, super small. Books, any books or podcasts that have been helpful for you?
Yeah. So all sorts of books and podcasts. So I figure I know the law as well as I'll probably know it as much as I can possibly take in the moment with all the other things in my brain that I need to handle. So I don't listen to a lot of subject matter podcasts anymore. I listen to podcasts in areas that I most want to learn and that I'm most interested in and that I believe will help me most with personal and professional growth. Like Jefferson Fisher lately, I've been listening to his podcasts because they're short and they're sound bitey, but he has such great advice on how to communicate more effectively and use it to your advantage and build better relationships. Just awesome. And he's a seemingly really young guy who's just like shot up. It's so fun to watch. And then as far as marketing, once you're raised venture capital, everyone wants you to focus on the big stuff, the ads and the SEO and all that stuff. But I also still like listening to the Amy Porterfields or the Donald Millers of the world who really focus on your customer, their state of mind, how you want them to feel is almost more important than what the product does. And not losing that and staying humble. And I love it. All that. And then all the venture capital podcasts too, just to stay in the know and remind myself that because we're not .ai, it's going to be tricky moving forward.
Maybe someday. Yeah. And because I'm going to compile all these podcasts on our 50th episode and share it all. Is there any books that have been impactful for you as an entrepreneur that are like your go-to books that you think of when you think about your growth?
Yeah. So I think, where is it? Yeah. Startup CEO. If you're thinking about founding a company, I'm sure you could use it for a law firm too. But if you're really thinking about legal tech, justice tech, Startup CEO is a great one. I always have up here to reference. What else do I have? Oh my God, I've got so many. I wouldn't even know where to start. I'm sorry, this is...
No, that's perfect. That is perfect. Usually I have to look at my Kindle list.
I know, I'd have to...
It's like you have so much in your brain, you can't just like pull up all the books. So for me, there's 3 books that's always had an impact that I always go to, regardless of what I'm reading now. But it's so funny because just to show you that I'm not that smart, when I was talking about Arete, that's because I'm reading this book right now call Arete.
I love it. That's so great.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, just looking at my list, I've got everything from Ben Horowitz and Eric Ries to Jessica Zweig, who has this great book called Be on like personal and professional branding, Fierce Conversations, You Are a Badass Every Day. That was a fun one to read. And guerrilla marketing, also a good one when you're on a budget, but you've got to increase awareness pretty massively.
I'm looking forward to reading your book, which you haven't written yet. You don't have a book yet, right?
No, I don't.
I know you will. I could tell. So Erin,
one of these days.
Thank you. I hope we can continue to support each other. And I don't know why there's a thumbs up in my video, but
I was like, wow, that was great timing. Yeah.
Maybe. But let's continue to support each other. I'd love to talk to you off the record as well, and hopefully see you in person. Do you ever go to the Legal Tech Fund Summit?
To which one?
The Legal Tech Fund.
Oh, I really need to. I
Okay.
unfortunately have had to miss it the last couple of years.
Okay.
But I expect to go this next time around, and I'm usually at Clio and sometimes at the ABA Tech Show. But
Yes.
just reach out and we'll
Yes,
figure it out. I'd
perfect.
love to meet you in person.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.